Welcome, folks, to season 2 of Dicey Banter. We are the TTRPG Talk Show. We speak to all the makers and shakers within the tabletop space while having fun and meaningful conversations while we're at it. And tonight's a really special episode because this is the premiere episode for season 2 of Dicey Banter. So before we get to all of that, a huge reminder in the state of our times currently that I and this channel stand against genocide and ethnic cleansing, and we support all the oppressed people around the world struggling against injustice, imperialism, and colonization. Free DRC, free Sudan, free Palestine, and trans rights, trans and queer rights everywhere, all the time, forever, unapologetically. And with that, folks, I am Valiant Dorian. I use he, him, his pronouns. You can find me all around the internet at Valiant Dorian or at Otso SpiritBear. Please enjoy that lovely treasure I just set you on. And tonight, I mean, you see her on screen. I have the distinct pleasure of re-interviewing our amazing guest. She's a queer neurodivergent, New England-based TTRPG creator and game designer with a passion for GMless and character-driven TTRPGs. And you can find her games published under Siren Songs Games on itch.io, Indie Press Revolution, and Drive-Thru RPG. Everyone, please welcome back to the Dicey Banner chair, Meghan Cross. Meghan, please introduce yourself for the folks at home.
Hello! I am so happy to be back. I am Megan. I use she, her pronouns. You can find me pretty much any place you can find somebody on the internet at Megan Lynn FTW. And yeah, I am a indie game designer that loves making games about characters, and I also love making silly shitpost games when I'm not making deep emotional games about characters. I'm making silly shitpost games on my blue sky.
The duality of man, shitpost
Yes.
games and deeply emotional connecting,
Yes.
like character-driven games. If you want to find out more about Meghan Cross, folks, please use !guest in chat to get all of her links and also links to the itch page and all of her incredible content. And if you are here with us, you can also use Patron to access the link to the Kickstarter of the game that we will be discussing today. So please use those commands right now. I'll give you a moment to do that. And with that, before we get started, if you're enjoying tonight's Dicey Banner, please consider donating and leaving us a tip. The funds raised will be used to tip myself and our guests to show your appreciation. Use !donate in chat to support us. And if you are enjoying these episodes and wish you could enjoy them a little earlier, you can pledge to my Patreon because you will get access to exclusive news, works in progress, behind the scenes, as well as early episodes of Dicey Banner. And with that, we must get started and we must begin talking about Oh Patron Mine. So before we get to the game, before we talk about this new crowdfunding project that you've got going on that has at this point of recording not yet released but will be released once this stream goes live, let's do some reintroductions, Megan, to the folks around here. So the first question I need to ask you, because based on this game that you've designed and what we discussed in the production meeting, you're a Warlock main deep in your heart.
Yes.
Please sell me on your life choices there on being a Warlock main.
Oh, God. So, being a Warlock main, what I love most about Warlocks is the inherent built-in dramatic backstory goodness that doesn't come with a lot of other classes. I would say maybe like paladin, cleric at best. And I just like the juicy goodness that can come from having that kind of pre-existing relationship. Like, not just like it's more so than like a pre-existing relationship between characters. Like, it is a very intense dynamic of powered versus, like, it's a very intense power dynamic. And it could be any manner of relationship. It could be antagonistic, it could be beneficial. Like, there's so much potential there. And as someone, even before I was a game designer, like, just as a player, like, I'm like I'm the one that rolls up with a ton of backstory. Like I'm the one that shows up with a ton of knives to give my GMs so that they can hurt my characters. Like that's my entire deal.
I see.
And
Mhm.
and playing Warlocks just really like helped solidify that that's the kind of player I am.
So what I'm hearing is that you're a glutton for punishment. Really?
Yes. You would not be incorrect. I like to feel feelings. I like to feel feelings, and sometimes those feelings are good, and sometimes those feelings are sad, and I'm faced with the consequences of my own actions.
What's the ratio look
But
like between the happy and the sad?
it's not good.
It's
Not good.
I love we love a self-reflective player.
Yeah.
We love someone who knows
Yeah.
exactly what they want out of their gameplay experience.
Just pain.
Pain. So speaking of pain and being a warlock main, and thank you for selling me on your life choices, by the way. But as a paladin main, I deeply admire that. I also love paladins for the inbuilt storytelling, so that makes a lot of sense. So I deeply empathize with you there.
I feel like that's like the foil. Like paladins are the foil to warlocks.
Listen, I feel like be a warlock, like a paladin is being a warlock with more steps.
Yeah, with more rules.
There's more rules. I think there's some element of bureaucracy a little bit in there, depending on the kind of oath you take. There's a higher likelihood of bureaucracy, I should say.
Yeah.
And then with the warlock, it's being a paladin with less steps.
Yeah.
More direct.
It's like being it's like being a paladin, but like trash.
I mean, kind of, but it depends. I feel like it depends on your patron, and it depends on like
that's fair
oath you take. And on the topic of like the type of patrons, as a self-proclaimed glutton for punishment and enjoying the higher ratio of sadness, what are the kinds of patrons that you like, and what are the ones you don't like? Yes, I am putting you on the spot to give you a hot take of which are good and bad patrons.
Here, hot takes, here they come. So my biggest thing when I'm making characters, especially with warlocks, is I don't want to go for the obvious.
Okay.
Because I think that's boring. I think, here come the hot takes. I think, generally speaking, like your devils and your demon, like I think that's boring. I think selling your soul to the devil is boring.
It's been done. It's been done multiple times.
It's been done. Like, I guess, like, there's only so many ways that comes about, I guess. Like, so, as a player, what I usually tend towards was I would always go straight to the Archfey. Because there's so much room to play there. And I also really liked, I've played some Celestial Warlocks, and Celestial Warlocks are really fun too.
They are very fun.
So I think really I lean away from an antagonistic Warlock patron dynamic because I think that's boring. I like the idea of like consent, and that the warlock like entered into it of their own free will. Like they made the choice, they knew what they were getting into, they knew what was being asked of them, like it wasn't a trick or a trap. My absolute favorite warlock I played became a warlock because she saw her patron and fell in love with her and just decided to leave everything and follow her.
That's really gay.
It's so gay.
There's U-Haul lesbians and U-Haul sapphics, and then there's this.
Yeah, so she was an artist and saw her patron and was like so inspired to like make art, of her that she just like packed up her entire life and was like, I am going to go and follow. Like I'm just gonna
Yes.
follow her.
Yes. So you have
Um
a spin that we all love and know.
oh, absolutely.
Hopping into your Subaru Outback.
Yes. So like I like doing things that aren't like expected. Like I like having like a relationship between them that like there's still like that power imbalance because there always will be that power imbalance. That's the nature of the relationship, but it doesn't always have to be like an abusive, toxic type relationship. Like it can be one where it's like I like when even though like the warlock is giving or the patron is giving more because obviously like they're bestowing their power, but like they all there's a bit of like they need their warlock.
Yeah.
Or there's something like the warlock does something for them that like fulfills something that they can't do on their own, I guess. Like it's just more fun and interesting, and I think it also gives like GMs room to play.
That is true.
Which if you make a cool warlock patron, then like your GM gets to play that cool warlock patron.
That is very true, and we love playing cool warlocks, warlock patrons. I mean, it's a lot of fun. But you hit something very interesting there about how a lot of kind of the default dynamics between the warlock and their patron being antagonistic. Because I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm also realizing that, oh yeah, a lot of the games that I've been in that have warlocks in it, typically, if not full on antagonistic, there's always this kind of like shroud of like dark influence and things, like someone holding all of the cards essentially, and you are not a huge fan of that. Why do you think that dynamic has kind of like become the default here? Is it just because of pop culture? Is it just because of tropes? Are we just here because of tropes?
I feel like it, like warlocks have this rap for being like the edge lord, like as if like warlock is like the default evil edgelord class or things like that. Like I guess like when you hear like you entered into a pact with something to get magic, like your default is like, well, that can't be good. But like what if your patron is a unicorn? Like that's cool. Like what if you're like I just think that's just I think it is tropes. I think it's like you think of somebody that's like, oh, I sold my soul to the devil so that I could get magic.
Sometimes your patron is a bank of magic. It's just a magic bank, and you just signed a loan that you know that you know the incremental payments you need to make for that bank. No, I love that.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Like maybe your patron is just like somebody who's got a lot of power and is bored and likes dishing it out to humans just to see what happens.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
an art patron that's just like, I'm so bored and I'm so rich. Can you please just make me some art? Like extremely niche bits of art, and as your dynamic grows, the requests become more and more obscure.
God,
that sounds like fun to me. Well, thank you for giving me some of your hot takes about warlocks and patrons. It really sets the tone, I think, for what the rest of this interview is gonna look like. Which brings me to my very normal next question. Are warlocks bottoms? And if so, why? It's season 2. I'm allowed to ask whatever I want now.
The answer to your question is yes. The reasoning is gestures broadly at everything warlocks are about. Warlocks are bottoms. Doesn't matter if you're like a bottom, doesn't matter if you're like a bratty sub, like warlocks are bottoms. Period. Like
assigned bottom at class choice.
Like you could be a power bottom, you could be a bratty sub, like you could but you just are.
These are.
And
We're here
if you mainly play Warlocks and had never thought of this before, just take like a couple minutes to really like let that sink into your soul and understand that that is who you are at your core.
Mm-hmm.
Life will be easier from now on.
We'll give them a moment for that realization to kind of like
Just some
bloom.
self-reflection.
Yeah, just a little moment for them here.
Yeah.
Listen, it's Dicey Banter. We're here to talk about important things.
Important things.
Important things.
Yeah.
We're here helping you explore
Hot
your
button
identity.
issue. Hot button issues.
Our Warlocks bottoms the hot button issue. I really wish that the tabletop space would have hot button issues like that. Just fun, silly things like our Warlocks bottoms.
Instead of just like rehashing the same discourse every 4 weeks, like let's talk about the things that matter.
I do feel like being in the tabletop space and having to endure discourse in the tabletop space feels like an enduring karmic cycle that I do not wish to be a part of.
Yeah.
It really
It's
hurts.
like when you refuse to ask for directions and then you're like, are we lost? No. Well, we just passed that tree. You're like, oh man, it's the same discourse that was here 3 weeks ago.
That's the thing. The timeline's getting shorter, Megan. The timeline is getting shorter.
You're like, oh, well, there's that. So that means System Matters is going to be up in 2 weeks, and then we're all going to have to talk about that for 4 days.
Oh no! Oh no, like this. Moving swiftly on from the TTRPG discourse, we're here to talk about O Patron Mine, folks, in Dicey Banter and chat. So before we get started, y'all are probably wondering what is O Patron Mine, and I'm going to turn over to Megan to tell us what is O Patron Mine.
I am happy to tell you about O Patron Mine. In fact, I got my test print yesterday. They're very small, which is intentional. But
I love that size. This is a great size. More things need
I
to
wanted
be
it
that
to
size.
I wanted it to be very reminiscent of like a tarot guidebook, so I wanted it to be like itty bitty. So just a little guy. But O Patron Mine is a tarot based solo game about the meeting between a mundane person and a supernatural entity and the agreement that they enter into together as a result of that meeting. It is at its core a warlock backstory generator. To be reductive.
We're not here to be reductive.
We're not here to be reductive.
We're not here to be reductive.
That is the quickest elevator pitch, is that it can be a warlock backstory generator. But it is a game that is meant, you can play it on your own. It plays quickly. It's like, when I've played it, at like 30 to 45 minutes thereabouts. And you it's very, very tarot inspired. You draw a 3-card spread. First card is your who this entity is that you're meeting. Second card is where you met, what are the circumstances of your meeting. And then the third card is what they require of you to bestow you with some of their power. And all of the prompts are inspired by the major arcana of the tarot. So it is it's really cool, to toot my own horn. I love it a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it is a solo game, but there is a 2-player variant that, rather than playing it as like prompt and journaling exercises, if you are playing O Patron Mine as a precursor to a larger campaign and you wanted to build your backstory with your GM, you can use the prompts as basis for scenes that you can role play together, with your GM playing the patron and you playing your character.
I love that a lot, and we're going to dive into all of that because you said a lot of like really, really fascinating, interesting things about the kind of like overarching mechanical elements of O Patron Mine. But I'm going to kind of continue on this kind of like origin path of, we've just come back from Huntered. Brilliant game. We love Huntered. We love our hunters chasing monsters, and the inevitable homoeroticism that will arise from that, the violent, bloody homoeroticism that rises from that. With O Patron Mine, what was the sort of kind of like inspiration point? What was the origin point for you to go, what I need to make and design right now is this sort of anthology play and construction of what would be the meaning between a warlock and their patron?
So I feel like Oh Patron Mine is a game that's been a long time coming. It's a game that I've wanted to write for a while, but didn't know what shape it was gonna take. Ever since I started writing games, I'm like, I need to write a game for the Warlocks. Like, it's been something I've been wanting to do for many years, and the more I dug into like, what does that mean if I say that I want to write a game about Warlocks? Like, what about it do I want the game to be? Like, where's the focus? And I love writing character creation games, world building games, games that can be a precursor to something larger or played in conjunction with other games. And then I think just one day out of the blue, the idea came of like, maybe I'll just make some patrons. Like, I'll just make some patrons, put them in like a little thing and post it like for free on itch or something like that. Like, I'll just make some patrons because I'm sick of the patrons that you get normally. Like, I'm just gonna make some cool unique ones that people can use, and that'll be that. And then the idea of using the major arcana as a jumping off point came into my head, and kind of I instantly knew that it was not just going to be me making a bunch of patrons. It was going to be a thing that was bigger than I wanted it to be or anticipated it being, because that's how I write games.
It sounds like it's you at least had that realization pretty early, though.
Yeah. I think within like the first set of prompts I wrote, I like sat back and was like, all right, so this is what this is. Like, this is what this is going to be. And I love it because I really like how everything came together, but at the same time, I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, why?
How have I done this? How have I made a massive project all over again?
Like, always. I was like, this was supposed to be something I was gonna like bang out over the course of like a weekend. And it ended up taking like 4 to 6 months to get everything written and where I wanted it. And that's, I tend to design quickly. Like, if something clicks, it clicks, and I'm a fast designer. But this, it took time, and I think a lot of it was just I wanted it to be accurate to the meaning of the tarot was kind of the biggest thing for me, but I also just wanted it to be something that would be interesting for people and stuff that you would flip through and be like, oh, that's a cool idea. I hadn't thought of that. Which I like to think I did. And as I leaned more into the tarot aspect of it, the gameplay kind of fell into place with that. Like, thinking of it as like, if it's going to be that tarot inspired, I'm just going to lean all the way in and make it almost like a game as ritual type thing, and using the 3-card spread as the gameplay mechanic versus trying to figure out something else. I'm like, I'm just going to lean into using the tarot.
No, I really, really love that. And it sounds like this game sort of started off as like a generative, thought-provoking sort of like resource for folks, and then turned into an anthology play game that folks get to like participate in. I'm at least glad that you had the realization early that this project was gonna be bigger than you initially thought it was gonna be, and we're very, very excited for the release. And for the rest of y'all who are in chat, it will be released now. Please use !patron right now to go and back it on Kickstarter. Thank you very much. With that, Thank you so much for answering that question. My next one about kind of like the origins of O Patron Mine is less to do with the origins and more to do with like self-indulgent game designer thoughts. Because I have my game designer daydreams. When I make a game, I imagine all of the imaginary tables that my game is going to be played at with all the imaginary people, and I wonder or hope or dream of like a specific experience that I hope that these people might have as they pick up a copy of my game. What is that for you for O Patron Mind? What does that look like? What do you hope this game gets to achieve, evoke from the tables that it will be played at?
I think the biggest thing is having created something that can help a player who, like, thinking of this as an anthology play game in this juncture rather than a standalone game, which it also is, but thinking of it as like newer, maybe even like newer players who like want more out of character creation, want more out of backstory, but don't know where to start, don't know how, like, it's the choice paralysis. Like, when you can do anything, where do you begin? And I think creating something that could help kind of like jumpstart that in someone. I mean, at any experience with TTRPGs is like really what the goal is just to like have somebody like sit down and think of something that they wouldn't have thought of otherwise, or like really dig into an idea. Like one of the best compliments I ever got on one of my games is somebody had messaged me and was like, I just want to let you know, like, I've had the worst writer's block for so long, and I played your game and I wrote like a dozen pages over the course of a weekend playing your game, and it shattered my writer's block. And like that's what I'm chasing, is as somebody who primarily designs like solo games, journaling games, that kind of thing. Like, I want to be able to give that to people, like give people that jumping off point to really go places creatively that they might not have gone before. And then to use that like compounding like throughout a larger game, or even like if you play it as a standalone game and then a game comes along and you're like, oh, this would be great if I pulled my character when I played this, like that kind of thing. Just like to let people go places that they wouldn't have gone on their own creatively.
That's so sweet. What a lovely little what a lovely little bit of feedback and compliment to get.
I know.
By a message from someone about your game.
Melted my heart. I'm like, oh my goodness.
That is so deeply sweet. No, I love to hear that. And you're so right about the like fact of you know, when you have so many directions you can go, it's really hard to kind of like move creatively and generatively for in a particular direction. I know sometimes I feel that way when I am like trying to build anything, whether it's a character or game or whatever. I'm like, I just wish someone could like say a couple words at me, or I could see a couple words that's gonna hit the brain the right way that I want it to, and then I can go from there. Right. And that's hard to get when you do not have something that's specifically designed to do that.
Yes.
Because it's not guaranteed that I can't just walk up to my husband and tell him, please say 5 words at me and see if I can make a game out of it real quick. You know, so that makes a ton of sense. So thank you for answering that. It's so deeply sweet. I love that. We've said a few times this phrase, anthology play. We've said this a few times. And for the audience at home who might not be familiar with anthology play, what does that play entail, and why is it utilized in O Patron Mine?
So anthology play, my interpretation of anthology play is telling one continual story, but utilizing multiple games to do it. That's how it was introduced to me. That's in my mind when I envision anthology play. That's what it is. It's the one through line story, utilizing different systems, different games to tell that one story. And ever since the first time I experienced anthology play, which was with some friends. We had a Monster of the Week game, but we only played Monster of the Week like every 2 sessions. Like we would splice in like other like one-shot games. Like Sleepaway or Anomaly, like things like that. And I just love the idea of like if there's a certain story beat that you want to tell in your story, but the system that you use doesn't do it as well as another game could, like there is no reason why you can't say, all right, well, for this arc or this session or this story beat, like we're going to be playing this game because this game does exactly what we want the story to do. And then when that story beat is done, we'll go back to this, or we might be wanting to do another story beat that a different game does better. Like, and I think as a player, like coming out of I played almost exclusively D&D for many years, like many of us.
It's a dominating system. What can we say?
Yes. And I feel like the biggest thing with D&D, focus please, is trying to make it fit for everything.
Yeah.
And when I stopped playing D&D and started playing a lot more indie games, it became less like what game do we want to play and more what story do we want to tell. And then you find the games that fit the stories rather than trying to make your story fit within the mechanics of a game that might be not be right for it. And ever since that, I feel like my brain fundamentally changed when I come to like approaching
the effect of indie TTRPGs. It strikes again.
Yep.
Rewiring.
This is your brain. This is your brain on indie TTRPGs. Oh, you're gonna start thinking all sorts of things. But as a designer now, like when I approach games, like I think of like, and as someone who generally designs, like I design short form games, like games that are intended to be played in one session. And thinking like, how would this, like, could this work in conjunction with other games? Like, is there openings to do that? And and that was a big thing of Oh Patron Mine, is that while I absolutely wanted it to be a game that stands on its own. Like it is a game that is like, it's a game on it. You can play it as is from front to back, walk away. That's it. But I also wanted to make sure that there's enough there in that in the text people saw and were encouraged to use it as a tool leading into a larger campaign, like, because I know that anthology play is not something a ton of people are familiar with or like are aware that that's like something you can do. It's like, oh, well, instead of writing a character backstory, like I could play a game. Like I've played games where like I've used like Star-Crossed as a character backstory builder because one of the other player characters was my ex. So we played Star-Crossed to, instead of just like talking out what our relationship is, we played this game, played out the entire relationship, and then you enter into the campaign with all of that.
That's great. That's spicy.
It's very spicy. And like that's the stuff that I love. Like that there are other ways than just sitting down and writing a backstory. And I want people to be encouraged that if they are, and it's not, this isn't just something that is for D&D Warlocks.
Yeah.
That was the inspiration behind it, but it's for any character that is dealing with a power that is far beyond what they should be dealing with, and there is an agreement entered into between the two of them. This game can help create
I can think
those
of several
backstories.
Systems where this would also work.
Right. Yeah, so, and that's what I wanted to do. I'm like, I want to make a game that it is its own thing, but I also want a game that you can use to create your character to then carry through into something else.
No, I love that, and I think, you know, for folks who heard that explanation of anthology play, might remember or think, oh, that sounds like Taskmaster RPG. Literally, Campaign 2 is quite literally an anthology play in terms of like systems. At the very least, we are following the agents of trans, but as we are moving between different places in the multiverse, we do use different games and different systems to tell those stories, and that's exactly what that is. So thank you for that like incredible explanation of anthology games, and like really kind of like explaining the goal here really for O Patron Mind, that yes, generative, yes, thinking more deeply about backstory, yes, making patrons more interesting, also yes, and it is meant to kind of be a game within itself, and a way to kind of like propel something forward in that sense, which I really like. And as we're discussing about the variations of play here that exist with O Patron Mind, you've mentioned that this game now has a 2-player variant leading into the crowdfunding cycle. So how did this happen? How did you start with, okay, this is solo, and you kind of like built it out, and you had the major arcana and all these prompts? At what point did you go, oh god, oh no, or oh god, oh yes, this is also a two-player game here?
I think so. Luckily for me, it wasn't difficult. Like, the 2-player variant rules are very, very short. So
okay.
Luckily it wasn't me making a lot more work for me. I think the biggest thing is, the biggest hurdle, one of the biggest hurdles I have as a game designer, is when I'm writing a game and then I remember that not everybody plays games like me, and not everybody approaches games like me. And I'm a self-indulgent game designer who writes games for myself.
We need more.
And then there are times, and like, if I were to approach a Patron Mine as somebody who did not design it, like, I would look at it and be like, oh, well, if I wanted to play this as like a backstory generator, instead of like writing it all down and giving it to my GM, like, maybe we could just like I would be like, can my GM and I like play it together, and like, how can you make a solo game a 2-player game? So I'm like, that's how I would approach it, or one of the ways that I would approach it from a player perspective. And I think a big part of when I'm writing rules text and game text is reassuring players that it's okay to play things different. Like, everybody who ever plays any of my games, you have carte blanche to not play them the way that they are written. You can break them in any way that you want. Like, they are no longer mine. I wrote them down and they are the universe's now. But I think a big part of like putting that in there was just to be like, okay, not everybody would immediately think that, but there are people that would go, oh, well, that's a cool idea. And if you see it written there to be like, oh, play it with your GM, it might just, it's almost like a permission giving thing where it's like, you can also do this. Like, just because it's a solo game. I play solo games collaboratively all the time. Like, I love playing solo games collaboratively. And that's what this is. It just adapts what is solo about it to incorporate 2 players. But it also brings the GM in on the character creation bits of it, because the GM is going to be the one who's playing this patron, this entity.
Yep.
It makes sense to have them characterizing them from the start.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
And it's just fun. Who doesn't want? I
would
love
rather-
2-player roleplay. Like, I love 2-player games and just like role-playing scenes with people just one-on-one. It's so much fun.
It's a lot of fun. I made a 2-player game recently, and I was like, actually, this rocks. This is a lot of fun. We should have more 2-player games. But like, you're so right about like looping in the GM into the like creation process, because I, as a GM, would 100% love to like just sit in probably just one session, right? Just like one session, sit with my player, we go through this game and we like generate this relationship together, we play it and we construct it together. Then me sitting at my desk at some afternoon and reading through some backstory and then probably asking a bunch of follow-up questions. That could we could just kind of like all in one day,
Right.
all in one session, and that sounds like probably really, really efficient and a really, really fun way to go through the process, rather than reading text and then asking
Rather than it being
questions.
homework.
rather than it being homework, rather than it being a research project,
Right.
which is really, really cool and really, really fun, and I really, really appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for this incredible outline of O Patron Mine. Reminder, folks, please use !patron to go and check out the game right now for crowdfunding. And in fact, now will be the great time to do it as we cut to a quick 10-minute break. Please, folks, get up, stretch, pet your pets. Tell Mr. Valley and Dorian loves them very, very much. Make sure to check out the crowdfunder when we are on break. And a huge reminder that when we come back, we'll be talking about more things about Warlocks and Patrons, and about working with tarot and building a tarot RP prompt game. And with that, take care, folks. Enjoy your 10-minute break. See you soon. Bye. Hi, folks, and welcome back to Dicey Banter, our Season 2 premiere. I hope you took that 10-minute break to go rest, get up, stretch, pet your pets, and tell them Mr. Valley and Dorian loves them very, very much. Now that we're back, I'm here with my incredible guest, Meghan Cross of Siren Songs Games, and we're talking about her brand new game, currently crowdfunding over on Kickstarter, O Patron Mine. Please use !patron in chat to go and check it out and back it. That would be incredible if you backed it right now. And if you want to find out more of the stuff that Meghan is working on, please use !guest to find all of her relevant links, and go and follow her on social media on Itch and all the other cool places that you can find her on. And with that, hi Meghan, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that break. We're back and we're here to talk about more O Patron Mine, but specifically, I think we talked a bit about the mechanics. Now that we're back, I want to talk more about the patrons. Like we've been talking about this game where people can kind of like build their backstories and such. Let's give them kind of like a flavor of what they can expect. So before we get to the parts of a little teaser of what they can expect, so you made this game to deepen the well that is Warlocks, patrons, and the relationship that they have with one another. We kind of touched on this before, but I wanted to ask you again, as you were building on this game, what did you think was missing in the previous iterations of what were Warlock and patron relationships, and how did you move and design knowing that gap in designing O Patron Mine?
Yeah. Probably the biggest thing for me, and something I knew for sure I wanted to be a main part of O Patron Mine, is the pact itself. What are the terms and conditions, but really just what was the agreement made between the two entities? Like what happened that they arrived at that place, like that they would make this agreement that the patron would be bestowing the warlock with this power. What did they ask for in exchange for it? And I think that's the biggest gap, and one of the biggest parts about the relationship between the two of them is that pact, and you don't have the opportunity, or you're not prompted to, during character creation, like really explore what that means.
Yeah.
And I wanted, once again, because I am a player who loves pain, I also, giving your GM like just that little bit of ammunition, where like with something like a patron mine, where it's like, oh, like these are the terms of my pact. Like this is what my patron requires of me. Do with that what you will as we go and play this game.
Yeah.
And some of them are a little mean, and some of them are not so mean. It's all relative. I think it's a bad gauge. I was just about to be like, well, it's none of them are things that I wouldn't do to my own character, but I don't think that's a good gauge of anything.
As you've established earlier, you're a glutton for pain. There's very little outside of the purview. It sounds like how to hurt your warlock.
But yeah, we can do some sneaky peeks and read some stuff. But that was like the biggest thing for me is diving into the nature of that agreement. Like what led to it being made? What are the terms? Like, is it revocable? Like what, like how seriously does the patron hold this agreement? Like, is it just like a handshake deal, or is this like a serious contract? Like how is it viewed by both the warlock and the patron? Like what's expected from both people like involved in it? And just really digging into that as a concept and as one of like the defining features of a warlock backstory.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. So that is definitely a huge like gap, and I agree with you, is kind of like concretizing what would a pact like this look like, really, other than you have sold me your soul,
right,
and I will dangle this power, for it's the only thing you have really in this deal, while I have the rest of the cards. And with that, this being a tarot-based game, what was the construction of that pact kind of like look like? And when you were designing this, how did you kind of balance the idea of giving enough of a concrete idea without necessarily kind of like, here's term 1 to 5 of this particular contract?
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's not how you designed this game.
No, I took, so by nature of the design of the game, the terms of the pact is the third prompt, because it's the third card. So often I was digging into them after I had already established the who and the where, which gave me like a better view of who this entity is and what would they want, and once again, like this all loops back to the tarot, like based on what that card is all about, what would they ask for? Like, what is an entity inspired by this arcana? What do they hold? Like, what are their truest values? Like, what is most important to them? What would they require of somebody in order to share their power? And just taking all of those cues from the cards themselves and the meaning of the cards. And my goal always is to give the players just enough to go on without feeling guided to one particular answer, but also to give, but to not be so vague that there are too many options, that you have too much to go on. And I think the big thing for me as a designer who I design a lot of prompt-based games, it's where I'm comfortable as a designer and what I like to do. So I love doing things where it's like you have your prompt, and then how you interpret it can change entirely by what the follow-up questions are that make you that like dig into those. so really everything when I was constructing this game and constructing all of the prompts, everything looped back to what that card means and what a physical embodiment of this card. What would they look like? How would they act? Where would they appear? Like, what do they want from you in order for you to like share their power? Like, thinking of it as like, if this card was a person, who are they? What's their deal? And that, in essence, is what this game. I took my visioning and then paired away all of the details that I added into it being much more basic, so that the player then can fill in more blanks themselves.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. That makes a lot of sense, because it's hard to know what someone wants from you if you don't know who they are or where they come from. And being able to kind of like construct those things beforehand, I think it makes complete sense that the pack can come easily and smoothly afterwards. And that is really, really cool. Do you have a favorite kind of pact that you've designed? You're smiling, so that must be true.
I'm like looking through the book. So my favorite, I do have a favorite.
She has a favorite child, everyone.
Well, I have a favorite. It's funny because I have like favorites of like each category, but my favorite what they were is for justice.
Okay.
And so for justice, so what do they require in exchange for power? They will give you power in exchange for your lies. While their power dwells within you, you can only tell the truth. And then the follow-ups are there any exceptions to this rule, and what does it feel like when you attempt to lie?
Oh, that's fucked up. That's fucked up.
So thinking from like a standalone perspective, like, yeah, that's cool, but then thinking about like that leading in, like, if you go into a campaign and like your GM knows that your character cannot lie.
I cannot lie. That is so... Oh my god, no, but this is giving me... This is for the Wheel of Time girlies out there. This is giving me the... So, if you haven't watched, you should. The Wheel of Time is wonderful and incredible. The Order of Mages, who are occupied entirely by women, their whole deal as kind of like a pact to the realm, as a sign of like trustworthiness and goodwill, are asked to not lie. So they have magical bindings upon them, upon which they cannot lie. But like they literally have an order within this sort of like mage-like organization, where the people who occupy that particular like order, like sub-order, I guess, are spy masters. So I remember watching this series and going, now how are you going to do that, spy masters? And watching people deceive but not lie is so it was incredible. And the second you told me about that, I was just like, oh, Moraine Sedai from Wheel of Time, my beloved. That's so fun.
Yeah, so like that one is, but then there are one like but then there are more, so like judgments I'm also a fan of, which is they will share their power with you, but first you must forgive the one who wronged you dearly, unforgivably. And then, why did you swear you would never forgive them? What did they do? What would forgiving them mean to you? And how do you stomach that thought?
Oh, that is so interesting. Judgment is like my favorite major arcana card.
So, like, I tried to weave in, like, some of them are like, this is a physical thing. Like, this will be a detriment to you in some way. But then there are ones that it's like judgment,
forgiving someone,
justice and forgiveness. It's like, no, like, it is holding you back to have not forgiven this person, and I cannot give you my power until you have let go of that.
You know, it's so interesting because you would think that, like, okay, so the pact is I don't like, if I can forgive them, then I have this power. But
Mhm.
knowing people, that's not usually like a one and done deal. You might feel okay right now with the idea of forgiving them, but in the course of a campaign, when more stuff about said person crops up, or when listen, if we're talking about warlock babies out there, traumatized little babies, right? When the trauma reels its head, will
Just
that forgiveness still stay intact?
like slaps the rock. This baby can fit so much trauma in it.
This baby can fit so much trauma in it. And that is so cool. Well done, Megan. That's so tasty.
Or let me say, this is hard. There's so many that I like. All right,
You're
I'll
like,
do one
oh,
more.
these are all of my children. Yeah, the rule of three.
It's one of those things where it's like I've been removed from it for like a little bit. As I like gave it to like Nat, my editor, and Kane, the layout artist. Everything is like, here you go. Like, I've done my part. Now you
I've
take
done my
this.
part. I wish to not look at it, please.
And then it's like there's this little inkling of joy, like when you read something, you're like, oh, I kind of killed this.
You did. You totally killed those.
But so,
you ate with those.
Temperance. So Temperance was the last one and the hardest one, but also is one of my favorites. So, their power demands moderation in all things. When shared, your life will be free from all extremes, each relationship, emotion, and moment. No longer will you be able to derive pure pleasure, feel complete joy, well with unbridled fury, or fall into the depths of sorrow.
Why is that?
What makes you eager to accept? You are given one day to live with excess before their powers take hold. What do you do with your time?
Megan, what the fuck? What is
It's about the pain.
It is about, I love that because it's a boon and a bane.
Yeah.
It's a boon and a bane.
Yeah, you can never be unbearably sad anymore, but nor can you be overwhelmingly happy anymore.
Imagine just feeling median.
All I know is my heart says maybe. It's just the neutral planet from Futurama.
Oh wow.
All I know is my heart says maybe.
That is so deeply fucked, but I love it. It's so deeply fucked, but I love it. Oh, that's so cool.
If you also want things that are deeply fucked, but you will love them.
Oh, Patreon mine. Exclamation point Patreon right now. Look at that tiny book. Look at that tiny book. It's so itty bitty.
Megan's face for scale. It's so little.
Megan's face for scale. It's such an easy thing to have. What an incredible... Honestly, you're going to get a bang out of your buck with that, folks. You can use that for so many things. Not even for your own characters. You can use it... GMs, make a weird guy.
Yeah, make like... If you need some kind of otherworldly entity to show up, this could also be a weird little guy generator.
Who says they need to start the campaign having a pact with this thing? What if you just had a guy later down the line who just shows up and tempts?
Yeah. And the other big thing about it is I wanted it to be something that was very, very replayable. Which, because of the way it's played, you take each of your 3 main prompts from 3 different cards. Chosen at random. So there are hundreds and hundreds of combinations of patrons that you can
numbers
pick. I tried to do the math to figure out like what the exact number is.
You did the math,
and I'm like,
Megan, why?
I looked up the formula to figure out the math, and the formula confused me, so I stopped. So I just said, I decided to go with hundreds.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy you decided to
hundreds
do
of
some
options.
self-care, and not do math. In addition to all the additional semi-mathy things you have to do in
I
building.
draw the line. I know.
Okay.
I draw the line at math. I can't do it.
Join us in
I
the guild
I will
of
write.
non-math game design.
I will write 66 prompts for a game, but I draw the line at doing math to figure out how many combinations that makes.
Which I think is so fair and valid.
Yeah.
I think that's fair and valid.
Girls gotta have. You gotta have boundaries.
You gotta have
My
boundaries
boundary is
somewhere.
math. No.
My boundary is math.
My boundary is math.
The new Siren song
Yep.
games.
Words
games
yes,
motto.
numbers no.
Thank you so much. Those packs are delicious. And you've just kind of given us a sneak peek behind not the exact numbers, but some of the numbers. 66 prompts. That's massive. And in combination with one another, probably more numbers. I am not a math gay. Do not ever
it's a
make
big
me
number.
do this. It's a big number.
It's a big number. Don't make us do math.
Don't do that to us.
It's a number that exists.
It's a number that does exist, and of those numbers that exist are multitudes of versions of patrons, and so talking more about patrons, we talked kind of in the beginning about some of the drawbacks of patrons and some of the ones that and we talked about the packs that make things interesting, what is often missing. So when you were designing these patrons, what are the new directions that you wanted to go in while writing them? What were the most compelling to you? I'm once again asking to choose between your children.
I think the biggest thing was wanting all of them to seem their own. Like, I wanted to convey that for sure this entity is something otherworldly, like something powerful. I wanted to convey elicit like a feeling based on how they appear that accompanies the card that they're derived from. I also wanted to make it very genderless.
Wow, yeah. Awesome.
With the exception of the High Priestess. The High Priestess, I believe, is the only one who oh no, the Empress. Oh no, the High Priestess is genderless. The Empress and Emperor are the only gender.
That makes a lot
patrons.
of sense to me as a tarot reader.
Everyone else, cards. Yeah. So they're the only ones that are gendered. Everyone else, I wanted it to be very fluid, very up for the the player can assign gender to them if they wish, but I didn't want to put that. I didn't want to make that choice for them. Like, I didn't want to interpret certain cards as one. Gender's a construct anyway, but I didn't want my interpretations of the cards to then bleed into the prompts. Like, if I would say, look at something and be like, oh, that seems very feminine, and then somebody else be like, well, so, and I wanted the appearances to, like, really it was about eliciting an emotion and trying to figure out with how little detail I can give to get across what this patron is about kind of became the name of the game. And bless Nat, my editor, who slashes at my work with reckless abandon, because I am a very wordy girl.
That's what you need from an editor. Reckless abandon.
And they are not afraid to go in there and be like, oh, what you said in this paragraph could just be a sentence. So say goodbye to your butts. And it's always for the better, but I don't have the heart to do it myself. So it became like, how little can I give the player to still make them see what I'm seeing? And then sometimes I got, like, I had some fun with it. Like, I think probably my favorite is the Tower.
Love the Tower card. Let's hear it.
So their form is ever changing and unknowable. Each time you glimpse a hint of recognition, they vex you with a different chaotic visage. What are 3 details you notice repeating across many of their forms? Do those details remind you of anyone? Eventually they speak. Whose voice do they speak with? What do you feel as you gaze upon them?
Megan, that's fun. You gotta say that to me. Oh, that's
So, like,
fucked.
because the tower is upheaval and chaos, and I'm like, how does that translate? And I'm like, it translates into something that doesn't have a form. It has it's constantly changing. It it exists to be unknowable and chaotic to people.
Oh, that's so sick. And also another thing, we're going to talk more about tarot in a second. You can tell that I'm a big tarot girly. Like, the thing about the tower is that it also elicits as a card, it by virtue of existing, a tiny little level of dread. You know, just it's that horrifying moment. I know no one wants to see the tower, but it's also like this kind of like whenever you pick up the tarot of the tower, there is that dread of impending chaos and upheaval. But it's always, whenever I've seen people pull this card, it's also the recognition of, oh fuck, this is the thing you're pulling on. I know what it is you're pulling on. And by me flipping this card, I'm already immediately aware of like what specifically is about, what this is about. And you've nailed it with the whole like, oh, what does it look like? What voice do you hear? Right? You're gonna immediately know what's going on.
I say, I'll let you. Do you have a request? You have one I can read.
A request?
Yes.
Oh. I'm
Other
open.
than I have shared the sun, the moon, and strength already, so you can pick one other than them if anyone's calling to you.
Wheel of Fortune.
Ooh, that one was a hard one for me.
I can imagine. It's a hard card to read in general. Because there's the base reading that everyone can have, which is like upright good, like reverse bad, but it's not just that. It's such a contextual card.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the figure that calls to you is sitting behind a low table, dressed meticulously in garments of bright colors, a deck of cards held in their hand. Artfully, they shuffle the cards before motioning you to sit down, the fabric of their sleeves dancing across the table. What about them draws you in? The first thing they say catches you off guard. What is it? And what good fortune do they predict for you?
Ooh, that's fun. That's fun. That's a weird little guy you can put in your campaign.
This is a weird little guy.
You don't even need to start a campaign with a guy like that. GMs.
No,
you can just put that guy somewhere.
Just put him somewhere.
Just put him somewhere.
It's just a little guy.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing such cool sneak peeks, Dicey Banter exclusive sneak peeks.
Dicey get exclusives.
Please go back in right now. Exclamation point patron. Now. That is so deeply cool. Thank you for sharing those really cool patrons and the cool packs. We've kind of started this tangent already on the tarot, so I feel compelled that we should continue and talking about like tarot. So I guess I should start first with like you talked about creating more patrons, and then using the prompts from the tarot to kind of like diversify them. At one point, did you go, oh, it is the tarot that I need and not any sort of other like playing cards or any other sort of like tool to create those prompts for the patrons?
I think so. I've always been very interested in tarot as a practice, and I feel drawn to it. And once like my wheels started turning on like what inspiration, like what can I use as inspiration for this, and then it's just was like everything I need is there. Like this can be like, because I think the thought came to me first is like, oh, it can play like tarot, but it's not necessarily directly inspired by tarot, but like by like the cards themselves, but it's inspired by like the practice of tarot. And I'm like, well, why does it have to stop there? Like, if I'm going to have the mechanics and the gameplay inspired by the practice, then why not also have everything else about it inspired by it? Because the cards are so rich and deep in meaning that it's just, and I only did uprights. Like, I could go, like,
That's
there's
more options if you reverse.
Like, there's such a deep well of meaning behind all of these cards, and like the more that I dove in, the more I'm like, this is what this game, like, this is this game. Like, this is absolutely what it is. It was around then that I realized that I was probably way in over my head as far as a true comprehension of tarot. I did a lot of research. I did a lot of reading, but I worked with Emma, aka Dread Void Witch, aka Lady Dread, over on Blue Sky, who is a decades practitioner of tarot, and she was a huge help as I was going through the process of doing my own research, writing these prompts. I would pass it to her, and she would review and either be like, yes, this is like on the right track, like this is a correct interpretation, like where you're going is a correct interpretation of this card, or would be like, this is like, because some of the times it would even be like, this is a little too obvious, like think about, like, this card can also mean XYZ, so maybe think in this direction rather than here. So there was a lot of working and reworking of these prompts, but really my biggest thing, in addition to just making cool prompts and cool patrons that people would like, was really just making sure that I was doing right by the tarot, by making sure that my interpretations were correct, that I was presenting it in a correct way, which is why it was so important to work with somebody who has that depth of knowledge from so many years of reading tarot and practicing tarot. So she was indispensable, especially when I got to some that like tripped me up a little bit. I'm like, I've read so much and I still don't know how to translate this into a person. And she would be able to be like, think about it from like this perspective, and was kind of able to like piece things together, which is great. And I also got to learn a ton about tarot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Tarot is it's an old ass practice, and you know, it's endured over several generations. And you mentioned that you've done like research on it first before, you know, consulting a consultant. As a designer, at what point were you in the process when you're like, okay, I need someone, I need a consultant, right? I mainly ask this especially for a lot of the budding game designers within who are in the chat right now, who might have that question of like, oh, when do I call in someone? At what point of the process?
I think for me, it was, I got to a point where I, like, probably the first like half of them came pretty easily. And then I was getting to cards that I'm like, at best I'm guessing, or I'm making too big of leaps from like one thing to another to try to pull things together. And like, for me, I think a big part about figuring out like when the best time to ask a consultant or use a consultant is, like, if you feel like you're beyond your depth and that the game is going to suffer because of it, or the game is not going to do what you want it to do, that's when you call in somebody who knows better. And it's worth it, because what O Patron Mine is now is so much better than it could have been had it just been me trying to muddle through on my own. Like, having somebody with that experience beyond, like, having, like, it's always nice to have a second set of eyes. Like, having an editor is indispensable, but like having somebody who's looking at it from one viewpoint, like somebody who's looking at it just from the viewpoint of, is this a true representation of of what these cards mean, was really nice, because it also, like, as the person who's designing everything, like, it's harder for me to funnel in on one thing because I'm thinking about how everything in the game fits together. So having her be able to go through and make these notes, then I can work through them and respond to them and know if I'm on the right path, and or know if I need to change directions. And it was, I had, like, at first I had just kind of been like, hey, like, does anyone know things about tarot that can, like, help me out? And then I was like, you know what, like, I need to, like, find somebody, give them my money, have them, like, really go into this with a critical eye, because the game deserves it.
Yeah.
I think I get to a point where I'm like, this, like, it feels weird it's a weird phrasing, but, like, I'm like, this is what the game deserves.
Yeah.
If I want this game to be what I want it to be and what I'm envisioning it to be, these are the steps that I need to take. And I think that's something that, like, only you can tell. Like, like, you as a designer know yourself, and you know those feelings. And there's a lot of games where I get to a point where I'm like, it becomes less like, what do I want to do, and more like, what does this game deserve? And
I love that.
And I knew that, like, I knew what I wanted O Patron Mine to be, which means, like, gotta put in the time, gotta put in the work, gotta call in the big guns who are gonna help me get it to the place that I want it to be.
Absolutely. No, that makes so much sense. And, like, and I think it's so nice to hear. And the reason why I asked that question, especially to, like, my audience, is I feel like there's always this pressure that one puts on oneself to kind of be perfect at everything and everything, and to see someone like yourself who makes amazing games, who is, like, a successful game designer, who makes, you know, thought-provoking games that makes people email you that you broke their writer's block, right? That you too have moments where you're like, hey, this might be beyond me, and I'm gonna call in some help to help me out. And I think that's, like, an encouraging thing to hear, especially as, like, a younger game designer.
Yeah, like, there's no need to struggle unnecessarily. And that's what I would have done, is I would have just stared at it and gotten frustrated, and maybe even just walked away for an indeterminate amount of time, like I do with a lot of games that I get stuck on. But instead, it was as easy as, like, shooting off an email to someone, and then everything came together. So there's no need to struggle unnecessarily. It's okay. It's okay to ask for help, especially if the person you're asking for help is really good at the thing that you need help with.
Absolutely.
Because it'll be a lot easier for them than it will be for you to try to force your way through something that is hard.
Absolutely. No, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And before we begin wrapping up, you talked kind of about this experience of, like, working with this consultant, working on this game, and working with tarot has kind of, like, taught you a lot about tarot. And I wanted to ask you, as we, like, wrap up, what are some, like, new things that you've learned about tarot? What are the stuff that surprised you about it? And yeah, like, what was that process of discovery like been for you with this particular art?
I think a big part of it was the ideas that I had already about certain cards and, like, what they meant, and having this idea in my head just and a lot of the time just based on the name or based on like classic imagery.
Yeah.
And when you dig into certain cards and you realize you're like, oh, like this isn't like this is like the big one, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who like the big one is death.
Oh yeah.
And
Mhm.
you think like death, like all scary. It's like, no, like death is new beginnings and rebirth, and getting to dig into that and like the imagery around that and kind of reworking my own preconceived ideas about that. And even like with the tower, like what little I knew about the tarot, I'm like, all I know is that you don't want the tower to show up if somebody's reading for you, because there are no bad tarot cards, but the tower is bad. But if there were bad tarot cards, it would be the tower. And then looking into that, it's like, well, yes, it's about upheaval and chaos, but like the universe needs that.
Yeah.
Like you need that to move forward.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that's what you need.
Mhm.
And everything has its place. Like even the bad stuff, like there's a place for it.
Yeah.
And I think like looking at the major arcana like as a whole, like as one big dysfunctional family, it's like like everybody has their place.
Yep.
And even if it's not a card you want to see come up for you, like there's a reason.
Yeah.
And it's going to lead you to the place where you're going. And it's been very enlightening to really get to dive into that and get to like explore it. I'm still afraid of like the tarot deck is huge. Like there's a reason why I just stuck with the major arcana.
I do not
because
wish
the
to
minor arcana are
how many cards are in the tarot deck? 72?
There's so
I
many,
think?
yeah.
Yeah, that's
because it's 22 arcana and then there's 13 of each suit.
whatever that number totals up to.
It's a number that exists. Don't make us do math.
It's a number that exists. Don't make us do math. That's massive, and you know,
yeah,
that's a lot of patrons to come up with. And honestly, I think you've done a great job with 22 of the major arcana, and there's something powerful about the major arcana, right? It's the reason why they're major. It's whatever energy that they bring, it is extremely potent. And you feel it, and a lot of the kind of like imagery, the meanings, the interpretations are all extremely like potent and powerful. And I heard the sneak peeks. They're tasty and spicy, let me tell you. And it's so nice to hear folks kind of like learning more about the tarot and the immensely complex like practice that it is. I've been reading tarot for a few years now, and there are cards that rarely come up for me, so I don't get the chance to practice what they mean. And my god, when they come up, I'm like, what's it?
Let me get my book.
What am I? What does this mean? What does this mean? Like, shake the little guidebook. And with that, thank you so much, Meghan. It's so nice to hear about all of your work, your process, and more about O Patron Mind. As we begin to wrap up this evening, do you want to let folks know where they can find you and how they can best support you now?
Yeah. So thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. It always is. You can find me on Blue Sky at MeghanLynFTW. You can find all of my games at meghanlynftw.itch.io. If you wanted to support me that way, you can also find some physical copies of my games on both Indie Press Revolution and Plus One EXP. Or you can toss me a Red Bull on Ko-fi.com/MeghanLynFTW. Because Red Bull is my patron, which has been the running joke for many, many, many years amongst my friends, is that I am a Warlock and my patron is Red Bull. I've actually written a Warlock patron. I've written an energy drink Warlock patron.
In O Patron Mind?
No, this is like early Meghan shit posting. I did a caffeine patron, Warlock patron. And then I did serious ones, but the caffeine one was the
That's good.
funniest one.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. And that's me. You can, exclamation point patron. Kickstarter will run for the entire month of February as part of Zine Quest / Zine Month. So go check it out and make really cool warlocks and let them hurt you, and then tell me how me and my games have hurt you.
And then tell me about it. No,
And then tell me about it, and I will offer you a formal apology for how me and my games have hurt you.
You heard it here first, folks. Thank you, Meghan, for being a guest on Dicey Banter. It is such a privilege to have you at this table, always and forever. And with that, as we begin wrapping up, thank you, folks, for tuning in to Dicey Banter. This is the premiere episode of Season 2. If you would like to get early access to new episodes of Season 2, please consider pledging to our Patreon. You'll be supporting me directly, supporting the show directly. All funds go directly back into the show, really. And you also get other access to other things, including works in progress, behind the scenes stuff, as well as just cool announcements of some of the other many secret projects I am a part of. So please go ahead and consider pledging. Even at the free tier, you get exclusive announcements. And with that, you can also catch me on my social media. You know where I am. Go ahead and check me out. And with that, folks, I am certain we're going to rate somebody amazing. Please hold the phone, hang on. We're going to go rate them and send them some SpiritBear love. And with that, thank you all so much. Have a great, fantastic rest of your evening. Take care, everyone. Bye.